God created our bodies so wonderfully and fearfully that we're still trying to figure out the design of this amazing body. And we still haven't figured out, but he did design it in an amazing way. That our job is to figure out how it's working and give it what it needs. And guess what? He designed it to heal itself.
Any health-related information on the following show provides general information only. Content presented on any show by any host or guest should not be substituted for a doctor's advice. Always consult your physician before beginning any new diet, exercise, or treatment program.
In a world where Big Pharma writes the script, it's time to believe. Biohack. Become.
We're here to explore the truth about healing that exists outside the broken medical system, to give you the knowledge, the community, and the strategies you need to become a hero of your own health story.
Your guide is a biohacking entrepreneur, a near-death survivor, and a cancer warrior navigating his own healing journey. Founder of BiohackingVille, Exodus Strong and QE Strong. Your host, Rob Rene. This is Biohackingville, where the medical system has failed us. One man is leading the rebellion to reclaim.
Hey, welcome to the inaugural Biohackingville podcast. This is so exciting because I have an amazing guest with us. Is Dr. Nasha Winters, and she is absolutely phenomenal. And she's a perfect person to have as the inaugural guest because her background and experience is vast, and she is a cancer survivor and winner, and she's been thriving. But not only is she that, but she has turned that into an amazing career where she's helping literally thousands and thousands of people get through this difficult issue. And she's done some really fun things that we're going to talk about. So welcome to the show.
Honor, Rob. Thank you for having me. And I'm very excited about what you're creating with this podcast. Are such a great way to bring us all to the table for conversation. So I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
Appreciate it. I'm really excited just to bring in the three things we talked about, three pillars, right? Biohacking, which is so popular and exciting. A lot of people are interested in it, which will be fun. We're going to talk about a lot of crazy topics about how we help the human body do what God intended it to be. And that's the third pillar is the foundation, is my faith. And I believe there's a lot of other people with faith that are going to love these discussions because we're going to integrate faith into the topics as well as biohacking. But then obviously the thing that you're very interested in is metabolic health and integrative oncology. So we're going to have a discussion and section within this, with this community, a community of communities about integrative oncology. I'm excited to dig into that, something I'm very passionate about personally, and we'll get into my story at some point, but right now we're talking about Nasha. So let's talk about Nasha. So Nasha, why don't you just give people a quick background of yourself, and then we can dig into the fun stuff that you're doing now.
Okay, perfect. I, like you, joined the Cancer Club many decades ago. I am, at the time of recording, I'm just shy of 34 years out from a terminal diagnosis of end-stage ovarian cancer.
Amen. Amen. Congratulations. That's so cool.
Yeah. Thank you. And it's been a really interesting journey. In fact, I will be really transparent with your listeners. I didn't expect to fight it or fix it or cure it. In fact, for the years leading up to my diagnosis, I was really, I was reticent about life. I didn't have a will to live. In fact, I tried to take my own life on occasions and had lost my faith along the way. I grew up in a very conservative state and conservative religious environment that was not resonant with my soul. Right. It was more like fear-based, and that's not the way I choose to live.
Yeah, that's not the way it should be either way, right?
No. So I'm definitely more about love and faith based on that piece here.
Right.
But my experience when I ended up with the diagnosis was very much about lighting that inner fire again, like helping me choose to live and helping me connect with my faith in a very new way, like the new compared to what I'd been raised in. Really been a guiding light for me. So I think that's a really important part of my story. And again, in that place, I was also trusting that I didn't expect to fix this. I simply wanted to understand it. And what's interesting, almost 3.5 decades later, I'm still learning. I'm still understanding it. And not just for myself, but for, as you mentioned, the tens of thousands of folks I've had direct impact with and hundreds of thousands indirect impact with.
So amazing.
I'm understanding it's just incredible. And I really look at cancer differently than maybe standard of care. I look at cancer and
Thank you. So glad for you.
That standard of care can offer. You and I were having some great discussions before this recording of there are so many things we can do as in the integrative world to enhance your standard of care therapies, things that are very accessible, things that are very universal. And we'll touch on that here in a moment because that ties in your biohacker piece as well as the oncology piece. But that's what I got started on this journey of just being really curious. And that I think is really the MO of the biohacker community as well, is curiosity. The other component of this is being the living laboratory. So biohackers are always like trying on different things. Right. That's what I've been doing as well all these years and applying the things that survived long enough to learn something new, to then apply something new to myself, to then learn something else new and apply something else. It's just been this sort of iterative process. And so that being said, to give a little context of what I've done with that is a lot of people say, what did you do in the beginning? Like, how did you cure yourself? And I feel like I should always be very transparent with people. I would never say that I'm cured.
Good point.
Okay? And that's a very heavy and defined and even like concrete concept in that all of us have cancer all the time.
There you go.
And
see, most people don't think that. You don't think if you're walking around that you have any cancer cells in your body, but like you said, everybody does, right? These are all the fun things I've learned in the last 7 months.
But the amazing thing, this beautiful container we all have, is these amazing built-in dynamics that keep that at bay, keep it in harmony or synergy with the rest of our ecosystem. And so that is the place that when cancer expresses, there are different reasons for why it expresses. Yes, we might all end up with a particular cancer diagnosis. So if we took 10 women with stage 4 ovarian cancer, there would be 10 different reasons for why they have it. Or 10 men with melanoma, there'd be 10 different reasons for why they have it. And our approach in standard of care is to treat it as a single target, single treatment. And when a single cause, or of course, standard of care says that it isn't, it's just a genetic disease and it's just bad luck and there's nothing you can do about it. That luckily is a bygone era. Luckily, that 110-year, 111-year-old theory is dying.
Yeah.
I know, like in fact, just in the last month or two, a paper came out showing that in fact, the metabolic theory of cancer now outpaces the somatic mutation or the genetic theory of cancer, so that we're starting to look at cancer through a different filter. Not to say that genes don't play a role.
Right.
They're just not the first expression. The downstream effect of a broken mitochondrial metabolic behavior is what leads to genetic vulnerability and genetic mutations and genetic signaling, but it's not the starting point, which is how we've approached it all of these past century and a few handful of years. That's a piece that I've been so interested in learning over all of my 3+ decades in this, is to understand the why of cancer, the individuality aspect of it, and the N of one treatment of it.
Yeah. I love that, because that's what I'm finding is so fascinating is, like you said, it's so individualized. Not only the different types of cancers, right? Every single type of cancer has a different mechanism and a different way to fight it. And it's just the word cancer is just so vast. And when you start looking at each specific thing, I got overwhelmed when I first started looking at it. It's like, oh my gosh. And then everything you read is like, there's a cancer treatment for this. Oh, have you done this? Have you done this? Have you done this? Have you done this? And so you just get this overwhelm of information. And it's just, come on, how do we make sense of this? And so I love your metabolic process in your book, because that started to make sense to me. I was an athlete when I was young, and I remember one of the ways that I was a better runner because I read this book called Eat to Win, right? And it was all about your nutrition and how what you put in your body fuels your body. So I had that foundation, right, as a young man. And then the last 5 years, I've been trying to help people with their health, and ever since the pandemic hit. And so just understanding that metabolic process totally made sense to me. I'm like, okay, that is how you have to work on this. And so obviously supplementation and just the mitochondrial process, and actually what you're feeding your body and how your body then does process it, is the way I started looking at how I'm going to combat mine. I love and I've been learning a ton from you, so I'm excited to dig into some of your processes and some of your books that you've written. But then also you have spent an enormous amount of time training a lot of other integrative oncologists. And that is so fascinating because, like you said, not only are you having an impact on thousands, you're having an impact on hundreds of thousands because of the impact you're having on other people. One, thank you for that. But let's dig in to talk about a little bit of what do you want to talk about? Your books. What's the next step you'd like to talk about?
Curious, like your listeners, being this is your inaugural discussion, I want to weave together a little bit so people may have some context. So
Perfect.
You've got these individuals that are listening that are curious consumers of this information.
Yep.
And many may be coming from, you said, like 3 different camps. One of maybe they've had a cancer diagnosis or they're just interested in integrative oncology. The other is they may be biohackers and they're all about optimizing their health. And others may just be faith-based who are very much like, how do I take care of this temple? How do I do about this? And getting back to that. So one thing I'd love for your listeners to know is I feel like we've made more headway into the understanding of cancer in the last 10 years, thanks to the biohacking community.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Very interesting. I've been going to medical conferences for decades, right? From conventional, the big ASCO, Super Bowl of standard of care oncology conferences, to the more integrative or alternative cancer conferences and everything in between, to understand that I think people, when they're so in the weeds looking at the tumor or the tumor pathways or the tumor cells, they miss what's wrapped around that, which is the terrain, the microenvironment, but also the individual, the being, and their thought process, their belief systems, their daily lifestyle choices, even who they hang out with, right? Impacts the expression of their health or disease. So I want people to think in context that these really are this seemingly unrelated trifecta that Rob is bringing together in this BiohackingVille. They're actually very woven, seamlessly woven together. So I just think that's really fascinating and want to reflect that back to you and to your listeners. And so when we think about cancer, most people are still today, when I speak at conferences, especially when there's lay people involved, and even when there's conventional medical practitioners and even alternative medical practitioners, everyone's still under the belief system that cancer is simply a genetic disorder. Dr. Theodore Bovary in 1914 coined the term somatic mutation, which said, hey, the start of cancer is a genetic derangement and basically bad luck, and there's nothing you can do. It just turns on the mechanism of cell proliferation, and basically it just goes until the organism dies. And that's just a very kind of dark and lack of hope. But that's the theory we've based all of our research in, all of our treatments on, and our ethos. In fact, we have made cancer, we've warred against cancer since 1971, when the National Cancer Institute came into creation, and when President Nixon declared the war on cancer. We were coming out of multiple wars, World War I, II, Korean War, Vietnam War. So we had a collective cultural understanding of war. So it seemed to be a good sort of metaphor to really direct our approach, which might have worked really well, or the idea of it in the beginning. But I want your listeners to know that we've virtually had a flatline impact by that declaration. We haven't really had really impressive outcomes.
Right.
Our overall survival rate is not that much improved over all of these years. And some of our biggest improvements were in lifestyle changes, such as smoking or things like that, like some of those fundamental pieces. But what was developing in early 1920s simultaneously to this somatic mutation was another quirky, controversial individual named Otto Warburg. There's a great book by Sam Apple called Ravenous, if people want to read the history here, who said, wait a minute, I think there's an upstream effect to that genetic expression, and that starts at the mitochondria. He was noting that these little cellular organs within our cells was where the magic was happening with regards to a cancering process. He noticed that cancer tumors, the mitochondria were fewer in number, and they looked really sick. They looked really shriveled and malformed and not very productive. And so for your listeners, mitochondria are the powerhouses. We were all taught that they're the mighty mitochondria make our ATP. It would still be another 100 years before we really understood that mitochondria do a heck of a lot more. Mitochondria have evolved from bacteria. And
wow.
they take up to upwards of 20% of our body mass. And so when you just think about that for a moment, and you think about all the things that have come to fruition in the past 50 years, we have changed our farming practices, we have changed our medical practices, we have basically blanketed the entire planet with a massive antibiotic known as Roundup.
Mm.
And when you think about 20% of your mass is a bacterium, that probably should be a clue. That could have a role in this as well. To look at the fact that, gosh, when I left medical school, the average age of somebody being diagnosed with cancer was 68. Cancer was always considered a disease of the elderly, of the
Right.
age. And yet now the average age is 48. That's just in
Wow.
less than 30 years. And to your point, since COVID, we now have a 36% increase in cancer diagnoses in people under the age of 40.
Yeah,
So
that's just ridiculous. Yeah.
it is ridiculous. And three big things have changed in the last 100 and 150 years. Number one, today we went from about 5 pounds of sugar per person per year in the 1850s to over 150 pounds of sugar per person per year. And let's not even talk about what sugar is sugar, whether it came from an apple, whether it came from like white table sugar or high fructose corn syrup or a piece of bread or a potato. Your chemistry, your physiology sees it the same way. The processes is the same in your chemistry. And so that's a big change. The way we raised our animals, like no animal, we should never eat an animal that's been raised in a factory mass produced environment. That's like eating a Superfund site. So, that I think no one would ever, our traditional diets of hunter gatherer, those weren't causing cancers, but definitely factory farmed and antibiotic driven fed and hormone fed animals eating glyphosate drenched grains. No one should be eating that, including the animals. That's a big change. And then also since the 1960s, we have a lot of new things. We have things like hormones on the market, which we pump into our food systems that we also are pumping into our humans. We have all these endocrine disrupting chemicals, glyphosate being one of them, but plastics. Did you ever see the movie, The Graduate? Talked about back in the 1960s, there's a famous line in that movie said, plastics, invest in plastics, the future. So that didn't exist before then. That's brand new and it's completely changed our physiology. But also the over 100,000 chemicals now that have come to market since World War II that have not been thoroughly tested, nor have they been looked at how they accumulate and interact with each other. They, scratching their head wondering why cancer is on the rise. There's a multitude of reasons of why. And even the American Cancer Society describes cancer itself as a combination of hundreds of diseases. So why do we continue down the path that this is, number one, a genetic disease, or that there is a single target and a single cure?
Right.
That's how we've invested all of our energy and our resources, and it will never change. The real change is when you start to question why. And the why for you individually. So before we started recording this, I was talking to Rob about his own journey. Yeah. I'm sure you'll share it either here or at another time with your community, but ultimately there's a few kind of trends or patterns that may show up with certain cancer types. So for instance, melanoma is very immunogenic. So there tends to be some dysregulation of the immune system as a baseline. And that often involves things along vitamin D levels, and appropriate ability to absorb vitamin D from both the sun, but also supplementation. And also issues of history of immune dysregulation, such as autoimmunity or allergic responses may have played a role. There can be genetics with regards to something called HLA, which is the human leukocyte antigen, also creates some predispositions. And then the microbiome, we've talked about that a little bit before the recording as well, that we now understand the microbiome is the bulk of our immune system, interacts there. And yet, as I've already mentioned, if we've blanketed the planet with this antibiotic substance, can you imagine the impact of our microbiome, which will have an impact on our immune system, which will have an impact on our resistance and resilience to disease of any kind, but cancer in particular? It's no wonder that 1 in 2 of us globally are expected to meet a cancer diagnosis in their lifetime today.
What? I haven't heard that one yet. Oh my gosh.
That's the most up-to-date statistic. And in the United States alone, in 2025 study, the United States alone, 1,700 people a day will die from this disease, and
Wow.
26,000 people a day will die from this disease globally.
How many is it globally?
6,000.
Wow, that's just brutal.
We're not asking the right questions. We're
Right.
not looking for the right solutions. And that's what my life's work has been. I believe that's why I was given this opportunity. I look at cancer as a messenger. I look at cancer as an opportunity. I look at cancer as a herring, like a red herring or a canary in the coal mine, telling us that something is out of rhythm, something is out of balance in the ecosystem inside of us, but also the ecosystem outside of us. And that how we were intended to function, it's nearly impossible to do so today in our modern times, unless you go to great lengths to change that. And that's what takes us back to the conversation about why biohacking has become such a popular tool, is that it's reminding us of where we came from. You can get there with natural means, such as light, watching sunrises, sunsets, getting your feet on the ground.
Blue light, the grounding.
Right? All those things.
Two of my favorite things.
Yeah. And eating a whole food, real food, whole food, seasonal, local, regional diet that's true to your genetic composition. Those are things that are considered biohacking.
Right.
And dealing with your stress response, your vagal nerve tone, breath work, and cold plunging, and all the things that are considered biohacks are things that actually set the tone of our nervous system to respond to the day-to-day stressors in a good way or a bad way, depending on how the tone of our vagal nervous system is functioning. These are just examples of where biohacking has become such a powerful resource and tool for the cancer community. And you can get as also expensive and high tech with biohacking as well. But
Right.
for the without means, there's a heck of a lot you can do that doesn't require a price tag.
That's
Right?
right. Yeah, you talked about two of them, right? That we're just getting that natural blue light from the sun before at dawn and dusk is free. Go get some of that and get your feet on the ground. Their grounding is free. Doing breath work is free.
Think about this for a moment. Average American, the average time Americans spend outdoors is 15 minutes a day. Or not too long of our history, just a few generations ago, we spent an average of 4 hours a day walking.
Wow.
Outdoors.
Wow.
And the concept of like chop wood, carry water, just the natural movements of survival were very different than today.
Oh, man, yeah. Kids, right? They're on their devices. Everybody gets amazing how we've transitioned.
And yet, so when you and I talk about just common sense and free for you to watch a sunrise and sunset and get out in the middle of the day to get the right light frequencies that are signals to our physiology, specifically to the cytochromes of our mitochondria, which is where health is created and destroyed, is at that level. In fact, our body's ability to combat cancer is also dependent on the function of the mitochondria. The concept of apoptosis or programmed cell death is under the direction of our mitochondria. And so the irony that we use tools in standard of care oncology that directly poison the mitochondria further, to me, the bigger miracle is that we survive standard of care.
Yeah, seriously. Right.
His thing is that it shouldn't be either or, standard of care or alternative, because my tools as an integrative oncologist increase the response rate and the quality of life and the quantity of life in patients undergoing standard of care. So basically, somebody like me makes standard of care doctors look better, right? Like,
yeah,
it's not about either or, that's bad or good, because there's a lot of amazing things that standard of care can do. You and I talked about this. You're taking an immune therapy right now, but how has your standard of care team looked at your vitamin D levels, looked at your microbiome, looked at your immune function?
They haven't. The only thing they did, which I was at least glad they did that, was they did genetic testing on it. I was like, good, at least I understand that. So now that I understand that, I can then do more research and see how I can help them. That's what I told them the last time I met is, hey, I'm doing all this diet and natural things to help you because I want you to help me. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And here's the irony is that if you might be getting the best of what standard of care has to offer based on your genetics. Hey, my tumor type has this personality and it fits with this particular targeted therapy beautifully. But if the environment that targeted therapy lands in is not responsive, then it's all for nothing.
Right. And that's stuff that I had no clue about. It's
right.
So fascinating. If your body's not accepting of that, it's just going to, just like you mentioned earlier, the genetic disposition of your body. It might some people might not process that vitamin D correctly because of a genetic predisposition. I'm supplementing with vitamin D, but hey, have I gotten myself checked to see if I'm actually processing that? No. So I need to do those types of things to give me that information. You went down the path and we talked about, I think, 2 of the 3, maybe you brought the third one into the thing. The first one was vitamin D, and then the second one was microbiome. What was the third one?
The third one is just your overall sort of pattern of your immune system.
Okay.
You can do a simple surrogate test with just a CBC, which is a complete blood count, which a direct-to-consumer lab might cost you $12 to get that test, right? But on that test, it's going to tell me your white blood cells and their function. It's going to tell me your red blood cell function, your kind of marrow health. It's going to show me your platelets, and it's going to show me your monocytes and your eosinophils and your basophils, which are these other subsets of your immune cells. And for instance, if I'm seeing highly elevated monocytes in someone who's dealing with cancer diagnosis, that could be a sign that you're also dealing with a viral infection, but it can also be a sign that you're doing something called a macrophage shift, which means that your immune system is now cloaking the cancer from the treatment. Actually, the cancer cells are able to hide from surveillance and from your immune treatments. That's not a good sign, right?
Yeah.
Neutrophil to lymphocyte ratio. There's also platelet to lymphocyte ratio, and there's various ones, but the simplest one to look at is your NLR, neutrophil to lymphocyte ratio. You want to have 1 to 2 neutrophils for every lymphocyte. But if you have more lymphocytes than neutrophils, that's classic for myelodysplastic syndrome or leukemias and lymphomas, sometimes melanomas, or that's also classic of someone who's been over-treated standard of care that's then pushed the marrow into a dyscrasia or a sick bone marrow, right? The other side is when patients are no longer responding to a therapy or have a poor prognosis before they even start a therapy, is if you have more than 3 to 1 neutrophils to lymphocytes. So the more neutrophils and the lower the lymphocytes you have, the less responsive you are to any therapy and the higher the incidence of death. If you even went to PubMed, neutrophil to lymphocyte ratios are prognostic for all-cause mortality.
Wow.
Right? This is a $12 test.
Wow. And how many people know that?
Exactly.
No one.
The $1,000 doctors to date in 46 countries that we've trained, and we're training more globally all over times a year. But things like that. But we can also do some sort of more sophisticated immune testing. So we can look at natural killer cells and T cells, and we can look at the certain ratios of certain cytokines that show me how your immune system is responding just to your day-to-day, but also to whatever treatments. So you and I talked about before, if someone's taking immune therapy and it's not doing anything, that is a significant indicator that it's what we know as a cold tumor, okay? Or a non-responsive tumor, or some people classify it as an exhausted T cell process. Okay. Now, standard of care, they don't have really any tools to warm that tumor up, except for just trying to throw more checkpoint inhibitors at it, more immune therapies at it. But it's like throwing something to a wall and it just slides down. It's not sticking. Right. So things like mistletoe therapy, which is one of my books, is called Mistletoe and the Future of Integrative Oncology. Yay!
There it is.
That's one of our really tried and true ways to warm up the immune system and create a better, robust response, for instance, to an immune therapy. Right. Also, hyperthermia. So putting heat on can also do that. A heat above and beyond a sauna level, but heat nonetheless can also potentiate that warming effect to getting a response.
Is it cold as well? Is it cold and hot? Or
but hot more so. Like the
really?
Heat is what's impacting the heat shock protein and the hypoxic inducible factor, which are the big things that are blocking the tumor's response to these immune therapies. So we can overcome that with things like fever induction therapies.
Which is what the basis of mistletoe is.
Got it.
I'm learning that. I'm reading the book. It's fascinating. So
I love there's an entire chapter just on fever physiology and understanding that. And of course, that's the other thing here. What have we done for the past 50 years in medicine? We've suppressed fever. Not a good idea. That was not a good plan.
So fascinating. Yeah.
It's
so
very fascinating. And so our bodies have forgotten what they were divinely designed to do.
Hey, that's the key point. I want you that what you just said is so absolutely critical to my understanding of this whole philosophy is that God created our bodies so wonderfully and fearfully that it's that we're still trying to figure out the design of this amazing body. And we still haven't figured out, but he did design it in an amazing way. That our job is to figure out how it's working and give it what it needs. And guess what? He designed it to heal itself. Well, love that. I want to keep preaching that, and I want to keep talking about that because I think that's critical to people's understanding. And then when you understand that, then you can start looking at and researching the things that you're doing, then things start making sense. That's what I love about it. It's common sense once you look at this amazing body and how it works and how it functions and how you give it the right nutrients. And I'm not a doctor, right? I'm just an average Joe that I love my human body. I love this temple. I love athletics and I love biohacking and I'm just passionate about it. And I'm obviously passionate about living. I think God has me on this earth for a reason, right? I want to make a big impact on this world. And I think this is what he's done this to me specifically so that I can be healed and I can understand this and I can help others. So I'm doing this podcast, not for me. I'm doing this podcast to be a blessing to a lot of others. Oh my gosh, this is just so much fun. I could do this for hours. I know we don't have hours, but I'm super excited. What are the fun things that you've been doing? You mentioned just in passing that you've been training thousands of doctors and you do it year in, year out, which is just incredible. Is that what your passion is now? Or what's the latest and greatest work for Nasha?
After my own diagnosis and the first decade of my diagnosis was literally, I felt like every day was a plight of survival. And so it took me a long time because back in 1991, there was no Dr. Google, there were no podcasts, there were no forums. The only information on alternative cancer care were very antiquated, at best, thoughts and approaches out there. We didn't have the research, we didn't have the metrics, we didn't have the understanding that we do today. In that, one of the things I learned early on is that I wanted a place that I could have gone where I could have access to the best imaging and the best diagnostics and the best blood and tissue biopsies and the best lab testing and the best functional medicine testing. But I also wanted to go to a place where I could also have my biopsy. And if I needed surgery, great. And if I wanted to use radiation or chemotherapy or targeted therapies or hormone blocking therapies or immune therapies, great, all under one roof. But I also wanted a place where I could go where I could get access to things like high dose IVC and hyperthermia and hyperbaric oxygen and PEMFs and photodynamic therapy and photobiomodulation and sonodynamic therapies and histotripsies and all these other really amazing tools. But I also wanted a place that was also clean and healing. I needed a place that was very thoughtful about the food and the water and even the building materials of the environment in which I was seeking healing. I spent the past 3+ decades traveling around the world looking for that, and it doesn't exist.
That's incredible, right? How sad is that?
It is sad. And there's a lot of places that come close. There's like places that have a lot of the recipe, but they're missing a few key ingredients. And so my mission and vision has always been to build this. And we have been donated the land in Southeast Arizona. It's part of a 1,200-acre organic regenerative farm, an intentional community that is moving through the lens of showing people how to live healthy on an unhealthy planet and being a model and a pilot for a new hospital system. And so this is going to be a 150-bed residential hospital and research institute focused in metabolic health in general and metabolic oncology in particular, literally on a farm.
Oh, cool.
Hardwired in and very thoughtful in our building materials. Our amazing architect on my podcast, Metabolic Matters, people could go and have a listen to my discussion with AK and our discussion about biophilic design and clean green building materials and creating sanctuary in any living environment. That's something that has come from this. But I realized about 10 years ago that, yeah, I could build a hospital, but if no one's there to work in it, that doesn't serve us. And
Right.
so having a physical container is only as good as the people that can, as the material or the education of the people working there. And the current system is flawed. I spent the first 20 years of my career trying to fix the medical system and realized that was pretty futile. So instead, about a decade or more ago, decided to actually just build a new one.
That's
As you do.
beautiful. There you
Yeah, that's where it started really transpiring that we have to really change our understanding of oncology, and we need to ask different questions, and we need to really focus more of an N of one, this concept of very personalized, precise medicine. We give a lot of lip service to it, but we don't actually apply it in today's model. Our medical systems, our EMRs, our financial insurance models, they're not geared to an N of one process. So
go.
we've had to fully leave that box and build a new system. And so from that, I've been training clinicians and allied health professionals and patient advocates. So a lot of people like you, Rob, who've been on this journey saying, my passion, my pain is now my purpose. So how can I take this and do something with it? So we do 2 cohorts a year for clinicians, for allied health professionals. That'd be like your nurses, your dietitians, your occupational therapists, and then our kind of layperson, our advocates that have walked this journey or maybe been a patient themselves or a caregiver for somebody who really can be the liaison between the patient and the clinician in a really powerful way, help people really be successful at applying this approach in their own lives. So that's something we're very passionate about. Education is an empowered patient is a hard to kill patient.
There you go.
Yeah, right. It's a hard to influence with big pharma, big ag. And so this is the place where this brings back critical thinking. This brings back curiosity. This brings back data over dogma. This brings back a whole new way, a new lens of looking at the individual and applying other tools in more unique ways to that individual. So a quick example is radiation therapy. Like we know radiation as is a known carcinogen. So can we do radiation better? Yes, we absolutely can. So first of all, we can use lower levels of it in a patient who is in a insulin restricted state. So when patients have high insulin or glucose levels, their cancer cells are virtually unharmed by the radiation.
Wow, interesting.
They're desensitized to the radiation. So the only thing you're really getting out of that is more damage to your healthy cells and making the cancer cells even more aggressive. So yes, it can maybe shrink it for right away, but remember, it'll shrink it down to a point, and then what's left behind comes back bigger and angrier, right? So we can potentiate radiation by using things like high dose melatonin, lots of literature data behind that, having the patient in a fasted state and maintaining a low carb lifestyle all the way through radiation therapy and for 6 to 12 months after to really harness the power of that. We can have the patient get a little bit of oxygen, whether it's through a hyperbaric or insufflation or even breathe by oxygen within 20, 30 minutes of going into their radiation therapy, which potentiates and opens up the pores to the tumor to get the radiation in there and protects the healthy tissue around it. We can even have the patient take a bump of exogenous ketones 20 to 30 minutes before their radiation, which will also potentiate the radiation therapy and protect the healthy. So that's the example. That is not alternative. That should be standard in every single patient undergoing radiation.
Makes total sense. But the way our system is set up, they won't do that. And
it would be so easy. Literally have a little, while the patient's sitting in the waiting room waiting to go get their radiation, to be huffing on some oxygen sitting in the waiting room. And instead of giving them a cup of juice, give them a cup of ketones, take while they're sitting there waiting, and then they walk in, they have their treatment, and they like that. It's that simple. That's just one example of how we can make standard care work better. We've now learned that you and I talked about immune therapies will not work if the microbiome is not intact.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Will not work if vitamin D levels are low. Will not work if the immune system is already off, right? From it. So those are things like we can, as integrated clinicians, we can reintegrate your immune system. We can re-educate and modulate it. We can support and change your microbiome. We can raise your vitamin D levels. Now you're responding and humming along beautifully with your.
That's what's so fascinating is you literally can look and see what the areas of your body is lacking and or what it's not producing. Maybe it's because of genetics. Maybe it's just because of lack of supplementation or lack of the food that you're eating or the bad water or bad air that you're breathing, etc. but you can reverse that, which is so amazing if you understand it. So you mentioned the microbiome. There was a couple of, I think, a test, something that you mentioned that people could do. What is that again?
A lot. So a lot of the big academic institutions are actually now doing research in exactly what I'm talking about. It's not woo and esoteric. Yeah. If you today went right now and typed in PubMed and typed in immune therapies and microbiome, you'll get hundreds of papers and hundreds of research trials in this.
Good.
It's not obscure what I'm speaking to. But so there's a lot of those institutions are actually doing their own in-house microbiome testing, but there's other companies. And one of my companies I really like is one called Vitract. Vitract, and they can actually take a look at your microbiome and see what's missing there that could actually enhance your response to immune therapies, for instance.
Very cool.
Very cool. I love that. It's exactly where I get excited. It's like, this is no longer either or, it's an and. These should be brought together. That is the future of oncology, is truly this integrative model. And the hospital was the dream. And then the kind of becoming aware of and asking different questions and becoming aware of all the things that you're putting in, on, and around your body, including places, people, and things that are new to our environments over the last 150 years that we need to become aware of and make concessions for. But then also training. So training the next generation of clinicians, training allied health professionals, training advocates, and training patients, and understanding that there's more to this than just being a lump of coal and letting everyone do something to you. You've got to be an active participant in this process. But we've also created a data platform. And so that's one of the things that we understand that it takes a lot of information to understand you. For instance, Rob, like for me to understand you, I'm wanting to look at your personal and medical history, your family history. I want to look at your single nucleotide polymorphisms. I want to look at your tumor personality. So your blood biopsy, your tissue biopsy. I want to look at your functional testing to see what types of other issues might be going on, whether it's in the immune system or toxicants or hormone dysregulation, blood sugar dysregulation. I want to look at even your traumas. I want to look at your emotional history and your emotional intelligence. And I want to see, there's lots of studies showing that adverse childhood events impact the way your body responds.
You know, how crazy is that, right? It's like you don't even think about stuff like that ever. No one does, but it's so critical and so important that you would have told me that 5 years ago. I'd say, you're nuts. But now it's like, I'm such a believer in that. It's so amazing.
It's so critical.
Sorry to interrupt you, but it's like
no, but that's it. It is so cool because those are the pieces that really create that individual understanding.
Right.
That's a lot of data for a clinician to move through. And that is not a luxury of time, is not what clinicians today have.
True.
So the platform is to take all that information in. It's a multifactorial translational tool that leads to clinical decision making for the clinician to help see the N of one of that patient, so that we ascertain right away what that patient's main drivers are, what their main patterns are, and then what are the best treatment choices. And that may include things from the NCCN guidelines, which is like the decision-making body of standard of care, saying if this, then this for treatment. So into that, but it'll also look at all of the data. There's literally 600,000 resources out there today that says, hey, for a BRAF mutation, we can look at these particular off-label drugs or these particular nutraceuticals or these particular herbs or these particular clinical trials that are showing impact on a BRAF mutation. Like that happens. This is the power of AI today, is that when you're asking the right questions in AI and you're bringing in the right rules-based engines and you're bringing in all of the resources, you now are opening up the aperture of that camera, of that lens, to see a far greater field of information that then tells us a very particular story about that individual, that tells us gives us a very particular roadmap on how best to serve that patient. And that's what MT Omics is designed to do, is to take what takes me a good, anywhere from 8 to 15 hours of going through that patient's data and come up with a treatment plan. This is being automated in real time, but now it's just telling me this is what's going on and this is where you start.
That's so incredible. So you need to say that again. It's MT, what is it called?
MT Omics, which stands for Metabolic Terrain Omics. But MT Omics is our data platform that's helping collect this data. It's a clinical decision-making tool. It's also a tool to help visualize for the patient as a teaching tool. to the patient so they can understand their uniqueness.
That's
They can
beautiful.
be the drivers themselves. They get the immediate feedback. So we're APIing with like wearables from HRV technologies to CGMs to blood ketone levels to there's even cool technologies now in facial recognition, like that
Wow.
actually is diagnostic in cancer and diagnostic and even behavioral patterns and even diagnostic to the clinician to teach us how best to meet that patient.
Wow. Interesting.
No. So this tool we're really excited. It's been betaing in our community for some time, and it's about to go to beyond our community by the end of this year, early part of 2026. So we're hopeful about that being a tool that will be an instrumental change in medicine as we know, in oncology in particular.
Yeah. How do people get access to that? Is there?
We're still taking go to M, and that'll start to get you into the realm to watch for it. There's still a lot of data. Technology is expensive, and so we're always looking for investors and people to keep developing this because we've been bootstrapping all of this for many years now to build it to the level that it is today, but it's going to be iterative constantly. It's going to be a dynamic system that will be evolving as our knowledge evolves, as our lives evolve. So we're very excited about that. So there's opportunities there for investment, but there's also, it will still launch soon in a way that's still meaningful, even though we have a long-term plan of where it's going to go, very meaningful. Like it'll still be nothing like anybody's seen so far.
Exciting. Yeah, that's so exciting. I just love it because you're treating the individual. What do you call it? You say the N of one, or what do you?
N of one. And that's just it, is we need tools to help clinicians scale N of one care. You just can't do it with systems.
Yeah, it's economically infeasible to do it. And like you said, the clinicians don't have, I'm lucky if I get 30 minutes with my doctor, and it costs me hundreds of dollars to have a 15-minute conversation with my doctor. I can't imagine him trying to spend 18 hours on my specific case. It'd be beautiful if he did, but it's just not feasible in our current environment. So yeah, having that tool.
How unfeasible it is, that's still drawn over 1,000 people into our trainings because they know it's the right thing to do.
Oh, that's great. Yeah.
And we're very excited for this tool to roll out to them first. Now that a lot of them have already experienced it and already see the benefit of it, but so we're going to have the next iteration of it and be even more excited. We want our community to master it first before we roll it out to the general public, because you still have to have teachers of the teachers. Just like you still have doctors to work in a hospital, there still needs to be new methodology, new trainings out there. So our education program, our data platform, we also have a product line that's very specific to the metabolic oncology space that has never existed before because this is a relatively new field. So we've been developing things that we've been wishing for and waiting for, and we realized no one else is going to do it.
No one's going to do it, so you got to do it yourself.
We created a nonprofit, which is raising funds to help patients pay for this type of care because it's not covered by standard of care.
I know that one personally.
All of us, anyone who's
super expensive to do even the stuff that I'm doing. I'm just doing basic stuff, and that's like.
And our hope is this will be standard and someday covered, but that may be a generation out. So we need to find ways to help patients get access to this. It should not just be accessed by people with means. That's one of the things we raise funds for. We also raise funds for, we have a lab, a research institute, and a lab where no one's willing to do the research on the things that will actually make a change because they're not the big blockbusters. They're not going to be bringing billions in the pharma.
They can't patent it. So it's like, they're not going to invest the time and effort and money to do it. Yeah.
So we've created a nonprofit, non-industry beholden lab to do these types of research, not just for our interests, but for other institutions and other individuals and other family foundations that have curiosity that says, okay, no one's willing to fund this trial, so let's use this group to do this research. So that's in Metabolic Training Institute of Health.org. Our education program is Metabolic Regen, and our comment is you educate to regenerate.
Is that where the people go to be either the clinician and or the advocate? Is that okay?
For the trainings there. And then on our website, so Metabolic Region, we also have a directory of clinicians, allied health professionals, and advocates who've come through our training and are still staying very current with their understanding and their mastering of this information because it's very dynamic. There's so much. When we started the trainings in 2020, from then, I've already redone the training 3 different times because that's how much has changed and grown in this. Our network shows you that these are people who are staying current on the latest information as well. So a lot of people have come through our training program that aren't still in the network. So we don't have any way to know how accountable they are to the methodology or applying it. But those who are in the network, you can feel pretty confident they're staying current and working this methodology and staying with this new approach. So there's a lot of working parts. You mentioned my books, The Metabolic Approach to Cancer. You mentioned the book. We've already shown the copy. Thank you. Emerging Future of Integrative Oncology. 2027, our book, Metabolic Approach to Cancer, will be in its 10th year. It still hits the #1 book in sales in oncology on Amazon pretty much monthly. There's like only 2 things we would change out of the book, but there's hundreds of pages of new information we're adding. So we're actually doing a revised expanded edition due out in 2027 for our 10-year anniversary.
Nice.
So there's that.
What are those things that I need before then?
Exactly.
I don't want to wait till 2027.
That's just it. The book now is still very relevant. It still rises to the top sales.
The Terrain 10. The Terrain 10 is amazing.
At your epigenetics, the fuel sources your cells are using, your toxin exposures, your microbiome, your immune system function, your inflammatory processes, your oxygenation and circulation processes, your hormone expression, your circadian rhythm and stress response, and your mental emotional health. Those are the 10 big drops in the bucket that impact the way we meet illness or meet health. And how we can,
let's meet health.
Those are the biggies. My gosh, we covered a lot of territory.
Nasha, you are so incredible. Gosh, the world is indebted to you, and I'm indebted to you. And we just literally physically met today. So I'm just such a huge pleasure to have you on the inaugural BiohackingVille podcast.
I'm honored.
I'm excited to see where this is going to go because I know it's going to help a lot of people. And you're helping a ton of people, so I'm excited to plug into all the things that you had mentioned. I'm super excited about learning how to be an advocate, for example. How can I help you, right? And how can you help me help others? And I think that's just a natural extension of what God wants me to do on this earth, is to help people, both with their health and their faith. And so I'm super excited about that. And man, I'm just in awe of all the things that you have done and are doing. And I can't wait to see your farm and the hospital on your farm. It's going to be super amazing. And then just that data platform, that's got me super excited because literally I love AI. I love technology. I'm creating my own AI agents. And I'm like, how do I train these agents to do these things? And I need information, right? I need the data that can then give it the appropriate responses. And a lot of that data is big pharma oriented and research oriented, and it's just bad data. So garbage in, garbage out, as they say, right? So to have the good data underlying those technologies is going to open up such an amazing world, like you mentioned. So I'm super stoked about that as well. And I'm hoping I can plug in and help you from that perspective and just help with technology. And I'm praying that BiohackingVille becomes a big platform for a lot of the things that you're doing in the future. So thank you. God bless you.
God bless you, Rob. Thank you. And thank you to all of your listeners and supporters. I'm looking forward to many more conversations that will stem from this. So
it's going to be awesome. Thank you very much. Thanks for being on the Biohackingville podcast. Signing off. Remember, if you have air in your lungs today, God has a plan for your life. Believe, biohack, become.
Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Join the community and get the show notes at BiohackingVille. Follow us on all social media platforms at BiohackingVille. Until next time, believe, biohack, become.